Do you understand that Duke has no answer for Houston's defense? Yeah, this could get ugly. This is Locked On Big 12.
You are Locked On Big 12, your daily podcast on the Big 12 Conference, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Tuesday, everybody. Welcome into Locked On Big 12. I'm Drake Toll from America's #1 Big 12 podcast, Locked On Big 12. Thank you for making this show your first listen every single day. TJ Pittenger of College Football Addiction will join. We'll start with Duke having no answer for Houston and the Cougars winning this game. Then Deion Sanders is so back, and some fans don't like it. They should. Also, BYU hoops, the future of the Big 12 with AJ DeBonsa and Richie Saunders and Igor Demon coming back. Possibly. We'll get there and more if you hit subscribe. I get to keep my job. Why am I delaying? TJ, Houston's got this in the bag.
Houston, the representative from the Big 12 that's there, and they take on Duke. Before we get into the Duke matchup on Saturday night, what has Houston done that has impressed you in this tournament so far?
Been really, really good in every game that they've played, and especially good defensively. No, Gonzaga, I believe, was one of the toughest matchups you could draw out of an 8 or a 9 seed for any of these ones. And analytically, the Zags are a top 10 team per KenPom, and shot quality loves them as well, and Torvik and Evan Mia and all of those. Yet Houston still was able to stay in control. And then this Tennessee game was the culmination of what we've seen Houston do all year long. Now, look, they're not infallible. Houston has some issues. They struggle to get to the free throw line. I read a stat from Jeff Fuller who says cumulative foul shots taken in the last 3 SEC versus Big 12 tournament games. The Big 12 had 27 free throws. The SEC had 70 trips to the line. So maybe that's not completely on Houston. Maybe that's more so a nod to how this tournament was officiated and how SEC teams got a little help. Shocking, I know. And Houston only went to the line 4 times against Tennessee, and the Volunteers went to the line 20 times, but it was still a 69-50 dominating win for the Cougars. And you think, well, Tennessee probably turned the ball over a lot. No. Less than double digits. They turned it over 9 times. Well, Tennessee probably really struggled on the glass. Only a 7 rebound difference here. It wasn't that crazy. Where did Tennessee fall short? They could not do a thing against the Houston defense. There were only three fast break points this entire game combined. Tennessee had all 3 of them. And outside of that, the Volunteers were so slow, they couldn't get comfortable in the offense they wanted to. And even when the shot clock was running down, they had time to run a set through once or twice or run a circle motion. They were still lost. So lost, they shot 5 for 29 from 3. That's 17%. 15 for 52 from the field. That's 29%. And that is bad. Houston is going to suffocate you defensively. Kelvin Sampson has built a team that one tweet gave a nod to, saying that Houston's built of 2 hoopers and 3 guys you could start for the Steelers. And that's what it feels like when you face Houston in March Madness this year or in the regular season. They have only lost 1 game since Feast Week, back in Thanksgiving, where teams were in the Bahamas or wherever. Houston's only felt a loss 1 time since then. This is right now the most dominant team in the country.
They have we've got 4 tough matchups. You talk about any other year, this, 4 top 10 teams in all-time KenPom. Any other year, any 4 of these teams would be the favorite to win the national championship, and they all just happen to be in the same weekend, playing on the same night. It actually should make for a pretty fun weekend of college basketball and a fun Monday night for the 2 teams that get there. A pretty tough matchup with Duke, and maybe having the best player in the country, and Cooper Flagg on their team. Knippel's been really good. They've got a lot of length, a lot of size. How do they match up here as an underdog?
They match up pretty well, to shoot you straight. Duke is, as you mentioned, this historic team. They're number 1 according to shot quality offensively with their efficiencies. They are number 6 defensively. For Houston, what we're going to get is the number 1 offense in the country with Duke against the number 1 defense in the nation with Houston. And we always say defense wins championships. Would you rather have an elite level offense or an elite level defense? Namely, in March Madness, you want the defense. And here's a major difference that that we're not talking about enough. Houston already has a guy with a ring. They already have LJ Cryer on the roster, who played not just on the roster, but in the starting lineup, who's a dominant force for them offensively, who played for Baylor in 2021 when that Bears team beat Houston in the Final Four, went on to Indianapolis, beat Gonzaga into submission, and he's got a ring to show for it. And that was 4 years ago. So that's a senior guard. And in March, when your defense is great, you have a senior guard that can lead. That's a recipe for success. For Duke, they're still led by a pretty young guy in Cooper Flagg, and he is their best player. He is probably the best player in the NCAA this season, and I'm not sure if you could debate that too much. Watching him play is magical. He will step into the NBA day one and make a massive difference. But the crux of this whole thing for me, Duke has not played a defense like this. Like, Arizona is good, yes, but not necessarily defensively. Alabama is good, yeah, but not defensively. And the entire ACC is bad. And if you ask shot quality, they still have Duke winning this game by a single shot. But they have Houston keeping it fairly low scoring, keeping the Duke offense at bay. And it's the Cougars' ability to honestly, as physical as they are, not foul you. They're really good at free throw rate defensively. They'll keep you off the line. And if they do that against Duke, if they get a normal or a fair whistle, Houston's defense can beat Duke into submission.
Factor here. We talk about like slowing down Flagg and using your length and stuff. Is there a player that you look at on the Houston roster that you're like, man, this guy needs to have a really good game for Houston to win this?
Yeah, pretty much everyone. We can't
all A deep,
right?
For every team.
We can't take away the fact that Duke is so good and so athletic and so long. So like Milos Uzan is going to have to be great defensively, and Emmanuel Sharp has to be great defensively, and Juwan Roberts, who rolled his ankle in the Big 12 tournament and has kind of been beat up this last month or so, as a guy who only got 16 minutes in the game against Tennessee. Can you get him to look like he's full strength this entire game, and you have another week of rest to get him there? But I'm going to point to LJ Cryer, who I've already talked a bit about offensively. He is going to have to continue his defensive pressure. He still played 38 minutes against Tennessee, despite that being a blowout at the end. They didn't really pull him. They wanted Cryer out there to be a catalyst. When he was at Baylor, he was really good on offense, pretty mediocre on defense. At Houston, under Kelvin Sampson, with that weight training program, defensive training, he has been intensely good on that side of the ball. If LJ Cryer can play great defense against Duke's guards for Houston, that will give you the opportunity to spend more time focusing on Cooper Flagg and where he is, and possibly doubling him or getting set back into a zone where you can really focus on, hey, where is Knippel? Where is Flagg? Can we keep those two guys out of the interior and have a hand in their face when they're on the exterior? If Cryer can set that tone, Houston's in a great spot.
We mentioned this, but all four teams, top 10 in Ken Pom all time. It feels like there's been so much focus on Duke and Cooper Flagg for understandable reasons, an all-time historic program. And then there's obviously, because this is just the college sports that we live in today, so much focus on the SEC. It feels like the SEC and Duke, and then this one other team. Oh yeah, Houston's in there too, right? It does. I mean, I'm an outsider. No, I don't necessarily cheer for any of these four teams. I certainly cheer against one of them. But are the expectations for Houston to win this thing? Like, wait, if they come off and make the Final Four but then lose, I'm not trying to like paint a moral victory before the game even happens, but is this still a pretty successful season for them? Like, where did they come into the year? What are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, I mean, they're a couple of years removed from the AAC, and they don't have an insane NIL pool like a BYU or a Texas Tech or even a Baylor. They are the seventh or eighth biggest show in town, and Houston fans understand that. They've got the Astros, who are massive, and the Texans. They're fighting a battle that most Big 12 teams could never fathom because, in Provo, Utah, there's one thing, and it's BYU. In Waco, Texas, there's one thing, and it's Baylor, unless you're a Chip and Joanna fan. And in Houston, there are so many things to compete with. So they're doing this off of Kelvin Sampson just being a great basketball coach and growing guys up out of either high school or the transfer portal, and doing this the old-fashioned way in college basketball. Yeah, if we get a portal guy, it's one or two here or there, but we don't have to necessarily rely on that. If we do get a portal guy, I don't want them to be a one and done. I want a portal guy who can stay for 2 or 3 years and grow up under the Houston way. So it's very impressive that the Big 12, the Houston Cougars, that a team that was in the AAC, that was a mid-major squad a couple of years ago, facing off against UAB in conference is in the Final Four again, like they were in 2021. But now they do it as a part of the Big 12 brand. It helps solidify them. Like Cincinnati and UCF, what have you done? What have you done in football and basketball since you got to the Big 12? For BYU, who's been so good at football and basketball, and now Houston, who's in a Final Four, that's a massive nod for a program that always thought it belonged to the power level, and they've proven it here.
Give me a prediction for not just this game, but both games on Saturday. I'll make you predict the SEC win just for fun.
Yeah, I think Duke gets out to an early lead, but Houston's defense is suffocating enough that it can help bring them back. Their depth is also spectacular. Houston's going to win this by a final score in my book of 62-58. Keep Duke underneath that 60-point range. And then I hope that both SEC teams lose. I hope there's a leak in the ceiling. They have to cancel the game, and that Houston's given a national championship. But I do have Florida beating Auburn, Houston and Florida in the national championship, and obviously the Cougars winning.
Yeah, I don't have a major preference in the late game. I hope you're wrong about the early game. I need Bruce Pearl to do me a solid. So.
Yep. Today's show is brought to you by Monarch Money. Look, I'm 24 years old. I don't know what I'm doing with my money. I look at my bank account and half of it's gone. Monarch Money keeps me from that being an issue. Easy to lose track with your money if you're not using Monarch Money, but when you do, it's your own personal CFO. Not just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. Stop just managing your money and start building wealth with Monarch Money. When I started using Monarch, I realized how much I was spending on food delivery. Now I budget much smarter. Instead of juggling multiple apps, track your spending. Check your finances. Plan long-term goals. Managing money with your partner is now smoother than ever as well. Track your shared personal accounts and set goals together. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for half off your first year. Go to Monarch Money and do it today. Today's show is also brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is where I get tickets. When the biggest games come up, when Houston's playing here in the weekend in San Antonio, Game Time is where I go. You can watch your favorite team live, feeling the energy of the crowd. Getting tickets should not be stressful. That's where Game Time comes in. With Game Time picks, curation makes it easier to find better value for tickets to sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and even more. Easy ticket shopping. You get peace of mind and super deals with the lowest price guaranteed or 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off your first purchase. That's Locked On College for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, and I promise you that is guaranteed.
A little news out of Boulder last week, and so we're not breaking anything here, Drake, but we are talking about Coach Prime, his extension, being one of the higher paid coaches in college football. Did I miss something? Because I was sure, based on message boards and Twitter and haters and hot takes, that he was gone. Isn't Travis? Is Travis Hunter coming back? Is George Sanders coming back? When I was told when his boys are gone, he was out of there, but now he's got a 5-6 year extent. Like, well, tell me about what's going on. Did they make a mistake? Is it the wrong Deion Sanders, or what's going on?
This is the coolest thing you could possibly ask for Colorado, for Deion Sanders, to have a guy like Coach Prime, the lottery ticket still in. This is what it is. It's like if you pressed a slot machine and every time you pulled the lever, you automatically got $100. And the lever is kind of unlimited until the slot machine wants to leave the casino on its own. And I think that you're paying enough now that Deion Sanders will keep his slot machine in Boulder. And to be honest, I don't know if he needed this kind of money. I don't think Deion is in it for the money. He's got plenty from Aflac and from his NFL playing days and from speaking engagements. This is not about being the richest man in college football. I think Deion Sanders will take this and give back with it. The Deion will take this and say, hey, this is more so security than it is this financial thing that I'm going to just reap and pull in so many dollars and get a nicer pool and a nicer house. No, this is about growing a program on stability and both parties knowing that Deion Sanders is here to stay. And the buyout is going to be so large now, 5 years, $54 million, so large now that it's going to take a struggle for a Nebraska or an Auburn to fire its coach, pay that buyout, and then pay for Deion's buyout? How much are you willing to dole out? And what are you willing to put into Deion Sanders? So now both parties are agreeing, hey, we're going to make this work, and the goal is to make it work long term. And this lottery ticket doesn't just affect Colorado. This is a very strong presence, a public figure who has walked in and completely changed the economy in a city, who has completely changed the economic value, the valuations of a university with Colorado. Their admissions are skyrocketing right now. Everything's centered around that city. Even in Denver, Deion Sanders has become the number one show in town. They're selling out the stadium. People want to see him. They want to see the spring game. He is a star in college football, even if ESPN's not talking about him near as much today as they were 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago. Deion is such a moneymaker for your university and for your town, and that must be emphasized. But TJ, we can get into it. There is that question. Well, the guy hasn't won a conference championship. He hasn't won double-digit games. He's lost two of his best players. Is this a decision predicated on wins or predicated on finances?
Well, I'll answer it. We'll pass it back to me and we'll play a little hopscotch here. But when you think about where they were just 2 years ago, coming off of one win, and then you go to four, which was underwhelming for sure. Not really unimpressive when you look at the entire scope, but underwhelming in Coach Prime's eyes, I'm sure. And then you get to 9 with a chance to be in the college football playoff, with a chance to, outside of a tiebreaker, be in the Big 12 championship game. And you do show that proof of concept, that growth. I mean, I do think it's warranted. I mean, we've seen coaches, Wisconsin just extended their guy after going 5-7. Oklahoma extended their guy and they haven't had a winning record yet. So I do think that it's a big deal for that. But I think it also, and I want to get your take on this, I think it also shows a little bit of, hey, they're okay trusting the process. There may be a step back this year. There may be a little bit of a regression when you lose some of the guys they lose or lost, and you do have a new quarterback. You've got different weapons that you're going into, but it's not just about this year. It's not like, oh man, you went 7-5 or you went 8-4, you took a slight step back, you're out of here. It's, man, we trust what you're building, and it's not just a team. We trust that you're building a program, Coach Prime, and so yeah, we'll see what this year looks like. It's early in spring and we don't really have a great idea, but we trust what you're building for the long term, and that's what this says to me.
Yes, and it says, hey, if you don't win 10 games this year, if you win 6 games this season at Colorado, we trust you. Mm-hmm. We're okay. We want you to be our coach moving forward. We want you to be the figurehead that represents Colorado. We want you to be the face of the Buffs. And honestly, if there's one figure who's the face of the Big 12, it's Deion Sanders. This conference needs Deion Sanders. If I'm Brett Yormark, I'm calling Deion saying, look, if it's money you want, if it's fame you want, whatever you want, we are going to help you get it. We are going to help you stay in Boulder, which I think there's like some tampering stuff there, and you probably can't do that. But the goal would be for everyone involved in the Big 12 and Colorado in that camp to keep him there, whether he's winning or losing, with the idea that, hey, if he goes 6-6 next year, which I don't think he will, but if he does 2 years from now, 3 years from now, huge athletes, big-time prospects still want to play for him. They still want to be in that program, and they want to call themselves students of Deion Sanders' game. They want to be coached by Deion. So it's a trust in him to win games moving forward, but a trust that even if he doesn't, he's going to be a stand-up example, a great example of what college football should be today for all the student-athletes that come through there, and a flagship for this conference, a flagship for that university that keeps Colorado on the map squarely, because prior to him, they had 2 winning seasons out of 16 years. He walks in, has one within his first 2 years, and I think he's going to have another one next year and the year after that, and put his team in a position to win national championships. Yes, I said national championships, because who doesn't want to play for Deion Sanders? I mean, genuinely, I know Eli Drinkwitz can walk into a living room and smooth somebody. And I know that Lane Kiffin can walk into a living room and smooth somebody. And they are great talkers and they come play in the SEC. But then Deion Sanders walks in. The guy who played in a football game and a baseball game on the same day. You know, Deion Sanders walks in, the guy whose son will be a top 2 or 3 draft pick in this year's NFL draft, the guy who coached the Heisman Trophy winner at Colorado, the guy who can be your meal ticket when it comes to NIL and your meal ticket when it comes to being drafted into the NFL. When that guy's in my living room, good luck saying no. He's going to be able to build a roster, even without a championship ring on his finger at Colorado right now, build a roster that has the school at that level.
quickly before we wrap up on Coach Prime, this isn't really the crux of our video, but I know you've probably talked about this, but just give me your 60-second take on the NCAA putting the kibosh on the spring game fun that could have revolutionized our sport in the spring.
Just another feather in the cap. Just another feather in the cap of me hating the NCAA. I don't know. Put the devil horn logo back down there. What you got it? Gosh, dang. That anytime we have something good, the NCAA says, nope, no fun for you, cancel it. And they've done that here with Dion and the idea of having a spring game where you bring in Syracuse. So while everybody else in college football is being a pansy right now, canceling their spring games altogether because, they're going to scout and recruit and steal our players in the transfer portal. Deion Sanders is doing the opposite, trying to revolutionize something that's kind of a dying thing in college football by bringing in another school and doing a training camp. You see the Colts face the Jaguars in their training camp, and this would have been the same thing, bringing the NFL to college football. And of course, because the idea was so good, the NCAA said no. And so could have been a massive moneymaker for both involved, a big piece of exposure for Syracuse, who does it the right way as well. And the NCAA just hates nice things, so they said, let's not do this. And I'm hopeful that if we do ever break off, the NCAA relents some control, that this could be a thing that Deion Sanders spearheads in the future.
Yeah, love the innovation, hate the NCAA. So
today's show is brought to you by Supply House. As someone who just bought their first house, Supply House has been massive for me to feel like I'm not behind. HVAC to plumbing to electrical work, Supply House is the reliable way to order products online and get them fast. Over 200,000 parts from 400 plus top brands. Find exactly what you need. If you need help with an order, Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service, so you'll always talk to a real person. And for trade pros looking for that extra edge, their free Trade Master program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Now it is your turn. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage. Join the Trade Master program today at supplyhouse.com/TM. Start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with more. Plus, use promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Go to supplyhouse.com.
The NCAA tournament is here, and so is the Bracket Breakdown. Locked On Podcast Network and Amazon Fire TV channels are teaming up to deliver NCAA tournament coverage like never before. Watch studio shows featuring former players and Locked On's local experts as they guide you through every upset, buzzer beater, and bracket matchup. Stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV channel. Search Bracket Breakdown to see it all for free. It's your team every day.
we talked a lot about BYU hoops recently, and obviously their run ends with just the most insane shooting performance by another team that I've ever seen. I even saw BYU people tweeting like, well, that luck ran out for Alabama pretty quick. Well, I don't want to call it a little bit luck, but there's a little bit of luck when you hit that many threes in one game. Can you put I know fans hate moral victories, but what's the success level? Like, was this season successful for BYU?
So much so, and it was not going to be when they started in conference with a losing record, and then they became the story of March. I'm going to stand behind that. That's why I keep talking about BYU basketball this year. The Arizonas and Kansases and Baylor and Houston, we expect them to be in the second weekend. We expect them to be in the Sweet 16, the Elite 8. They are very good basketball programs, and even Texas Tech has been a dominant force, made the national championship a few years ago. BYU, where did they come from? They walked into the best conference in college basketball and immediately made an impact, which I don't think anyone, myself included, could have expected. And then when there were no double-digit seeds or upsets, the only one was John Calipari, BYU got to become this big story of March, where the Tater Tots guys running out there, and this team of gritty BYU players who got it done against Wisconsin, despite the refs being against them, just find a way. And all of America is kind of rooting for BYU, which wasn't necessarily the case in years past. Jimmer Fredette was kind of their one flag of BYU getting to be at the top of college basketball, or really the top of college sports altogether. And this was the resurrection of that, showing that now that BYU is in a power conference and has the 16 fan bases in the Big 12 rooting for it, it's become contagious. The entire country got to get behind it. So a massive success for Kevin Young in year number one, where most coaches at BYU couldn't win a tournament game if they tried, couldn't even get BYU to the tournament. They've only been to a couple of Sweet 16s. Kevin Young did it in year one. Very impressive for BYU. BYU, and it showcases where they're going moving forward. This is the single most dangerous program now in the Big 12, possibly in football, definitely in basketball. Reason being, they just landed the number one player in the country, and their NIL investment is insane. People want to see BYU win. Their donors want to see BYU win, and the Cougars are going to continue to win because they have the money to do so. Jerem Jordan came on my show. Mo, I'm going long here. Oh, this is a soapbox, baby. Jerem Jordan of BYU TV came on my show, and he said to me, previously BYU wasn't doing any of this dirty money. There was no dirty laundry at BYU. Obviously, look what the school stands for. Now, money above table, where like everybody can see us doing it's legal. I've got this money in my hand. It's legal to just hand it to this kid. We're gonna do it all day. We're not gonna hide it. We're gonna tout that BYU is rich. That BYU has a commitment to athletics. Who cares that oh well, you just paid for your yes. Everyone's paying for their team. It's what you can do with NIL, and you're not just throwing money away. BYU, they are paying players who have committed to an honor code. Players who have committed to doing things differently at BYU, to having their faith or a faith at the center of how they do athletics. That is hard to say yes to for many athletes. That's hard to conform to, and BYU is very strict about it, and I admire their commitment to faith. So, hey, you come here and you adhere to our rules. You accept our culture at BYU, which is very different from even a Utah or a Texas Tech or other Big 12 schools. You do that, you're earning this money for the way that you build our brand up. You're earning this money. We're not just giving this out to win. We're doing this for something much bigger than that. That's the message from BYU, and it's public now. The Cougars have a whole lot of dough, and that's going to go a long way, especially with Kevin Young as the head coach.
When you look at them next year, a really early look, I know we're not even out of March yet and the Cougars are eliminated, but when you look at next year, when you look forward to November, what kind of year do you expect out of them next year? Talk to me about some of the guys coming back that are big time returners and anything else they may need to add to the roster for another run.
Well, they've already gotten one piece, a kid who was on the under-21 team in France who will come into BYU and immediately be an instant impact. We love the European players here. That for some reason now in basketball, the European players walk in and day one, they're just really, really good. And there are question marks still around Igor Demin. If Yegor Demin comes back to BYU, which I didn't think was the thing Jerem mentioned again on my show, that Yegor had a decision, and a couple weeks ago we thought maybe he'd come back. Then he had a great March Madness run, and so he should go to the NBA. I've always thought he's a surefire NBA guy immediately after his first year in college, but now with AJ DeBonsa, the number one player in the country, coming in, Yegor's like, yeah, man, I kind of want to play with him. I kind of want to keep doing this, and I can still make a good chunk of money while I'm here at BYU and get an education. Then the other big name, he was so famous for the tater tots, but before the tater tots deal happened, I knew that Richie Saunders was a baller. Anybody who knew ball, with or without tater tots, really liked Richie Saunders, and he can come back. 6'5" junior, KSL.com wrote an article detailing who all BYU could see return. They've mentioned that with DeBonsa coming in, that's a major factor for Demin to return, a major factor for Saunders to return. I don't see Saunders going to the NBA right now. I would put his shot at coming back to BYU at about 90%. He would not enter the transfer portal. He's a BYU guy. I don't think he's ready for the NBA. I believe he knows that. And why not come back, make money, be the face of the program next year, and help BYU win. So they're only adding 2 freshmen. They're losing 4 or 5 guys. They lost Cannon Catchings to the transfer portal, which I don't love, but I also don't hate. Sometimes there's positive attrition. There are folks who leave your program and you're ultimately better because they left. Best of luck to Cannon Catchings wherever he goes. The rest of the guys who are leaving, who are just too old to stay at BYU, who have run out of eligibility, they will be replaced out of the transfer portal, because with only 2 true freshmen coming in, that leaves you a lot of room to be picky and get the pieces that you want. But honestly, based on what they have coming back, Trevenell leaving or Mag leaving, Traore or Stewart leaving, what they have coming back, I don't know. I don't know, TJ, that they need an all-star transfer. They can build off of what they have in-house and be an elite basketball team next year, especially with DeBonsa. And if Demin comes back, they just need to build small pieces around their current core. They don't need a world beater. To me, go get the best player in D2 who's a sophomore. Let him play 7 minutes per game next year and then become a star his senior season. Go find that piece, that kind of guy. You don't need someone who's going to break your NIL bank and become a program builder or breaker. You just need to stick with what you're doing. I think Kevin Young knows that.
Where do they rank way early? I know there are other teams up there, Texas Tech. Where do they kind of rank in your way too early view of next year? I know other pieces will move around to their programs, but how do you view them? Top 5, top 3, top 2?
Oh, yeah, top 3, no doubt. And the reason being, we know more about BYU than we know about Arizona State, than we know about Baylor, than we know about Kansas. We know more about BYU than we do even about Houston and where the Cougars will go as they start to lose some of these guys to the NBA or those who have run out of eligibility because of what we understand and think about where BYU will be and who they'll have back. You have to put the Cougars in the top 3. Now, that can shift. Immediately, Baylor could land the top 3 transfers in the portal. They're going to try to. Kansas could land the top 2 or 3 transfers, or Kansas could add a couple of guys that become these wily veterans. The 4-year guy out of Western Kentucky who averages 13 points per game, and maybe he's not a top transfer, but he's a program builder. That could push BYU back, depending on the moves that they make over the course of the next month. But as it sits, because we are so confident about who will return, because we are so confident about what BYU has coming in with A.J. Debonsa, they have to be top 3, even with the number 1 player in the country, a guy who should be the number 1 overall draft pick in the NBA being in Provo next year. You can't put that team below 3 in the Big 12. They might even be at number 1 as it sits. It's just very hard to rank anybody anywhere before we see how high school recruits and transfer portal recruits evaluate their NIL, what universities they choose. From then moving forward, we have a better idea. But right now, BYU still has to be top 3.
A fun year for BYU, not just like you said in football, but also in basketball. They were a ton of fun to watch, and I know Cougar fans will be excited to see them after a long off season when we hit the field back in August. So, Drake, where can people follow you? Where can they find more of your content?
Yep, at LO Big 12 or at Drake C. Toll on Twitter and wherever you find your podcasts with Locked On Big 12. And let me say, TJ, I know that you and I have talked a lot about BYU here recently. I want to emphasize again, this is as if we've watched a lot of schools, Cincinnati and UCF, Stanford or SMU, that have bounced around to different conferences or moved up and down and all around, and very few of them have seen this kind of success at the power level. The reason we keep talking about BYU, the reason that we're very high on the Cougars, is they are doing something extraordinary. They're taking independence and coming from that land of wilderness. They're taking, the WCC with Portland and San Francisco and turning it into massive success on the football field and the basketball court. I don't know if we've seen this kind of jump in maybe college sports, major college sports history. BYU's done it in day 1.
Been pretty impressive to watch for sure. Drake, I appreciate your time, buddy.
Always, TJ.